So now that we've talked positive reviews and really landing those 5-star reviews, how do we go about managing those negative reviews when and if they do come in? So number one, we just want to avoid getting one in the first place. This is why we make sure that we check in during their stay. This is why that's encouraged. This is why we use template messages asking for feedback in private as well as in the interim. We ask for that feedback before they check out so that we can remediate it. We ask for feedback in private in a private note so that the people, the future guests, won't see that negative item or that, I guess, piece of area of development that we need for the listing if we have not already implemented it, excuse me. And this is also why we offer compensation as well. So many of you have already heard, or I've mentioned to you that when something goes wrong, especially from our team's end, meaning that our cleaning team may have forgotten something or we have fallen short or somebody miraculously has stolen the air mattress and the next guest group has needed it, at that point, our team does offer compensation for that. Now, this is not saying that we're returning the entire reservation fee back, but of course, even when you are somewhere and you are renting an Airbnb, you're staying in a hotel, if something happens and at the very least they provide you with, I don't know, a $20 gift card, it makes it a little better. It may not completely overturn the situation, but at the very least, it softens it just a bit. Now, of course, I want you to understand that none of this can actually provide a guarantee that the guest is not going to leave a negative review. Some folks absolutely still will, even if you give them the entire reservation fee back. But these steps are just going to help to really mitigate any ill feeling on their part. Because even when it does happen and when that negative review does come through, you need to make sure that you're not taking it personal. And even furthermore, keep an actual structured response. So what that structured response looks like, meaning you want to actually first thank them, right? And we're going to dive into what this looks like when we get into my responses to my own negative reviews. However, number one, just thanking them for their feedback. Then you want to go into actually acknowledging what they've stated. So acknowledge what went wrong during their trip, acknowledge what they've stated and how they feel, and then address how you've now started to remediate or provide a solution for future guests. Because again, this is where we are now speaking to future guests, not the guests that stayed there. And just as a heads up, if you do not know, even when you do respond to guest reviews, meaning that you offer a reply on your listing, they don't get notified that you've responded to the review. So honestly, once they write their review, they're not going to see what you say back. This is why, again, I like to emphasize that the response is less for them and to justify the fact that, well, this didn't happen and to just take up for yourself and get defensive. It's more that opportunity for you to sell to future guests and let them know, hey, this is where we may have went wrong, but this is how we're working on remediating it or how we already have remediated it. And then of course, just actually keep it professional. Again, sometimes these guests will get personal. They might say something personal, but when you actually, again, stay within the aspect of this is a business that I'm running, and you don't take that personal, it looks a lot better to those future guests as well. So understanding when removing reviews, let's say that you get a negative review, maybe it's completely not true. And at this point, you now want Airbnb to remove that review. I will let you all know that going through the process of trying to get a review removed by Airbnb is a little bit strenuous. And even furthermore, there are very few instances where they will actually remove a review. Now, I've listed 2 of them here, and we're going to talk about these. But one of the instances that I know for a fact they are going to remove a review is in the instance that a guest actually uses a manipulation tactic, meaning blackmail. So the guest says, well, I want a refund or my money back, or I'm going to be leaving a negative review. That is against Airbnb's terms of service. And in that instance, when you are actually having that communication via the Airbnb messenger and they can check that, Airbnb will remove that review because at that point, they've offered you an ultimatum, meaning if you don't give me my money back, then I'm going to leave a negative review. It's not solely based on their experience. And that's what Airbnb focuses on. And then even furthermore, let's say that they let you know that something is wrong and you offer a remediation, but the guest just never responds to that, or they are refusing to accept you remediating it, meaning that a guest reaches out and says, hey, there's a crazy leak under the sink and it's impeding on our experience during our reservation, and you offer to send a plumber out. that following morning or later that evening, at that point, if that guest refuses to accept that or they never respond, they cannot then loop back around within that review and now use that against you and bring that up because you've offered a solution and a remediation. And in addition to this, one that is not on here, and one that I've recently just found out, is really just those house rules that you write. And this is why we are so thorough when we do write these house rules, because little did I know that that's also just another term of agreement that the guest is signing with you. So there was an instance where I had a guest who said, hey, she came in and she's like, there's something going wrong, but she never let me know about that. She never reached out. She tried to say that we did not communicate. However, within my house rules, I let them know, hey, if there's anything going wrong, let us know so that we can fix that. So if you are writing something in your house rules, whether this is, there's a $50 charge if we find throw up in the house, that is now a term of agreement that the guest is signing, because when they book their reservation, they really have to check a box saying, I agree to these house rules. So what you include in your house rules is actually going to turn around and allow you to have a review removed in the instance that they mentioned something that could have been remediated by just reaching out. So hopefully that piece makes sense. Okay. Okay. So I want us to get some practice in with just managing the negative reviews. So I have a few examples here just of negative reviews that I've received over the last like 3 years. Some of these are a little older just because these are screenshots from likely earlier this year, late last year. However, I want to know, just for those of you that this is new information as well, how would you respond? And then even furthermore, like, where's the lesson in all of this? And then we'll debrief after each of these. So I believe I have about 3 examples. I'll read them off and then we can talk about it. But I also want to show you how I actually did respond within that public forum as well. Okay. Okay, so this is Tia. I had her about a year ago and she had booked my 3-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom house. So Tia started, I'm gonna read through this and then I can tell you the situation. So Tia says, hello, my visit was very disturbing to say the least. The presentation of the home was terrible. The smell was mildew. The keypad stopped working. The fridge was sticky. The bathrooms wasn't cleaned well. The beds are very uncomfortable. The house was freezing. We had thin ass blankets and we couldn't even control the heat ourselves. Had to call the owner. Only one TV worked in the house. I didn't like that it was people in the backyard during our stay, workers and neighbors. Owner is okay at texting, but terrible with answering the phone. The worst was Saturday night. A big ass bug was crawling on the floor in the master bedroom. If you can't tell, it was a roach. It was the most disgusting thing I ever seen. I would never go back and I wouldn't dare recommend this house to a bum. Sign, good day. So you all know that obviously this did not kill my Airbnb business. So again, negative reviews are not the end of the world. But just to give you a little bit of background on what was going on with Tia. So, well, actually, I'm not even going to say that. I want to know y'all's initial reaction, and then I can give you the response, because my response pretty much tells you what was going on with everything in regards to this situation anyway. So, initial thoughts, obviously, this is alarming, right? But I will let you all know that many, if not all of these things she stated was false. This was like a complete surprise to me. So understanding that, like, you see this, your guest has said nothing to you. Like, they have not said anything in regards to there's a problem going on or anything, and you get a notification and you read this public review. How would you feel?
I think after working really hard to put a place together so that people can stay there and making sure that it's clean and going through all the things that we're trying to go through, that would have been really disturbing, especially if, like you said, she didn't say anything while she was there.
Exactly. I think the hardest piece for me is when I get a bad review and they don't offer me a chance to like fix it. Like, you didn't tell me what was wrong. And again, especially for us, right? Because we're not renting our personal spaces. So for many of you, you won't stay in the unit. So you're not going to know day in and day out, each and everything that is going wrong, each kink. You have to rely on that communication you have with your guests so that they can let you know, like, hey, there's something going on with this, because you're relying on your cleaners to let you know. And your cleaners are probably cleaning up 3 or 4 other places too, and they're just trying to get out of there quick. So there's so many factors to this. Michael says, I would have felt hurt. Tora, you'd be mad as hell and a little discouraged. Absolutely. And this was actually one of my very first negative reviews, because it was just wild. A lot. I will say that the pandemic like pretty much spurted many of the negative reviews I started to receive. I will be honest with you all. But let me just dive into my response. And there are a couple of notes. I'm going to read the response first, and then I'm going to call out just when you are responding, why it's important to do it this way. So this is my response. And as you can see, it's a lot, right? But I'll tell you just first and foremost, I always say that when a guest writes a negative review, especially a long paragraph like that, because initially to folks who are coming and they're looking to book your place, that looks like a lot. Like if you were to book a place and you see a long paragraph of terrible things, you are going to think this is not a place I need to be booking. However, if you also then see a long response from the host, you're now intrigued. You want to know, because especially after she framed that last review, you're interested in, like, it's almost like a TV show. People are just nosy. So this is why I always say that if there's ever a paragraph being written, I'm going to double it. Like I'm going to write just as much as you, and I am going to literally respond to every single sentence. So this was my response to Tia's review. So I said, Tia, I really do wish you would have informed us you were having an unpleasant stay. The team reached out numerous times and you were unresponsive for the most part. The one time we did chat on Friday evening, you did not mention anything regarding your distaste for the state of the home. Before even discovering the issue with the keypad, our team sent you a note stating that your group should be using the keypad lock attached to the porch of the home to simply retrieve the physical key. You are the first person to mention disliking the staging of our home, and also the first to say it smells of mildew. I've had our cleaning team check on both of these comments and they are not holding true. We take photos after each cleaning to know how rooms are staged and how to track and to keep track of how well they are cleaned. This property was in a great shape at the start of your stay, and I do have ample images to prove it. I even walked through this home following its cleaning prior to your stay. When cleaning after your group, however, there were hot chips scattered everywhere, food smeared on numerous surfaces, and used sanitary napkins left open beside the trash bin. We do mention in the house rules and listing description that this is a smart home. So when you and your group leave the home, the thermostat auto turns to eco mode, which is heating at a temperature of 70 degrees. When you reached out stating you were a little chilly, I turned the temperature up to 75 and left it there. As stated in the house manual and check-in instructions sent to you, there are extra blankets in the drawer of the master bedroom. We also informed you well ahead of time that we have contractors completing a quiet project in the backyard of the home. That was when the tiny house was being built, everyone. These individuals never even used the home's entrance to access the backyard. They actually used the neighbors to ensure they didn't disturb you. Lastly, the roach you are mentioning is known as a water bug or palmetto bug here in Georgia. Our team has pest control out to each property we have monthly, but these bugs can sometimes find their way in on rainy weekends since this washes away the pest control chemicals on the perimeter of the home. This past weekend when you visited, we had 2 very cold, rainy days. I do apologize that you did not enjoy your stay, and do appreciate your feedback. However, most if not all of this is very untrue. So some call outs, right? Because I also mentioned just the structure of your response. I said that you want to thank them, you want to acknowledge, and then you want to address. So of course, initially appreciation, right? That initial appreciation of, okay, we appreciate your feedback. Thanks for letting us know. You want to include something like that within your response so that they're feeling heard. You want to acknowledge each and everything that they've mentioned. So there was a bunch of stuff she mentioned in her initial review. You said that the blankets were thin, you can't control the thermostat, there's bugs, it stank, it smelled like mildew. You said the house was ugly, like all of it. You brought out everything. So at that point, I am now responding and acknowledging each and every point that you've made and pretty much knocking it down, because you also have to understand that even for us, right, at times and many, many times, these guests are going to there's going to be an emotional spin on their review. As you can tell from Tia's as well, there was an emotional spin with you signing off saying you wouldn't dare recommend it to a bum, have a good day. Many people can already tell that, okay, maybe something went wrong. And a good future guest may even be able to say, you know what? She probably maybe was looking for some compensation. She maybe didn't get it. Like something, a good future guest is going to be able to recognize that, okay, this isn't necessarily an objective review that's being written. She's inserted her own emotion and subjection into it. So that's why when we go into my response, again, double the length so that though the type of guests who are going to read through reviews meticulously are going to read through this one. They are going to read all of this because the type of people that care about reviews, they want to know what's going on. So that is why we double it up. And then even furthermore, while we address each and every single thing, and then even furthermore, anything that it's like, okay, that's really bad. How did you fix it? We offer that, meaning that, okay, we have blankets saying that you just didn't read the house rules or the house manual, which states we have extra blankets. You didn't read the communication that said use the keypad lock. You didn't know that palmetto bugs are just bugs here in Georgia and in the South, and they're actually pretty normal. Or you also didn't know that this was a smart home, and we mentioned that. So your future guest is also going to be able to tell that, hey, I should probably make sure I thoroughly read the listing details and description and everything that's being sent to me. So that's why it's reiterated here as well. But I also say that this is a space for you to, again, speak to your future guests, because now you're letting them know, like, hey, now they know the listing has a keypad lock as well as a lockbox. They know that the listing is a smart home. They now know that the extra blankets are located within this place. The people who are reading this are going to pull the important details from it. So what are your thoughts? Like, I honestly should have asked how you all would have responded first. But yes. So this is actually one, and like I said, it did not necessarily hurt my future bookings at all. I was still getting booked because I was surprised too. I thought nobody was gonna book my place after she said all of that. I swore up and down they would not, but I actually recovered from that, which was really, really good.
I'm the type of person who would actually read your response just to see how you come back from it. So like reading your response, be like, oh, okay, I'd still stay. I'd be okay.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Like and that's what you want. That's what you want it to be. Like your response is more of like okay, yeah, I would still stay there. And to your point, Michael, I actually was not able to get it removed because this was before I realized or I knew about hey, if you've mentioned it in the house rules and they come around and they don't say anything, you can call Airbnb and get it removed. The consensus that many hosts have, like across the board, is that like, well, you really can't get a review removed from Airbnb. So, charge it to the game. It doesn't matter. It happens. It wasn't until I actually started calling when I got negative reviews. Again, the volume of them went up during the pandemic that I realized there's actually loopholes for this. So this one was not removed. It actually got pushed down pretty quickly, which is another piece that I should mention to you all, that when that does happen, like you want to make sure that those next guests you have coming in is like, okay, I really want to work so that they're writing me a review and writing me a good one. Because by the next week or two, it'll push that one down to where they won't even see it. They'll have to actually click into all of the reviews to see this negative one. Okay, so this is Monique. So Monique's wasn't that terrible. She said, nice house, overall comfortable, easy check-in process, and the owner's communication is great. Will say though, it's in the hood, but it's nothing to be alarmed about. Be sure to check out on time. Owner is not flexible as other Airbnbs or hotels and will charge you. Other than that, it's a cool spot for a quick trip. So this guest, and what happened. So this guest was actually fine up until checkout time. Checkout time came, our cleaners had arrived, and then I get a call from the cleaners at about 11:25 saying, hey, we've been waiting. They're still in the house. So I'm trying to call her group. I'm trying to call Monique and her group. They are not answering. At that point, I was living around the corner. So I then show up because typically, especially during the pandemic as well, our cleaners were a little weary of entering the home while guests were also there. So at that point, I knock on the door. Monique's in the shower. Her other friends are just chilling outside smoking, and they're just there. So that was a situation. It was a matter of, I guess, since we had began to, I don't want to say rush them, but we let them know like, hey, we have other guests checking in, so we do need you out. Our cleaners are already outside. They're ready to get in here. We need you out within the next 5 to 10 minutes. So I guess that rush was what she didn't like, even though everything else in regards to the trip was amazing. The checkout was where it fell short. And then she decided to mention all of this other stuff. So what do y'all think? Because I know that we've talked about as well location and of your listings, and whether or not something being like slightly in the hood is something you should worry about. So what are your thoughts? Is this something that would alarm you as a guest? Is this something that you would just like chuck up to the game as a host?
I mean, as a guest, if she said it was in the hood, I mean, I guess we don't have the address beforehand, do we, on Airbnb? Dang, I don't know. I would be a little like, ugh. But I think with you having so many other reviews, I wouldn't have been as turned off. But as a new Airbnb host, that would pretty much scare me if somebody put that it was in the hood.
Absolutely. And that is a really important piece as well that you're mentioning, Tora. Your other reviews are going to help to kind of speak for you, but many of you are new hosts. So something like this could be alarming to future guests, especially if they have nothing else to base it on. However, this is why we also say that if you find yourself having a listing that is near the hood or what have you, right? And it's really hard, especially for us here in Atlanta, because if you're familiar with Atlanta, you know that you could be in the hood 1 block and you go 2 blocks away and you're not in the hood anymore. So it's really hard. But this is why I say providing that heads up of just the type of environment that they are stepping into in the listing. And even furthermore, there's a neighborhood section where you can tell them about like, hey, what's going on? And this is why within mine, I then started to implement that statement of saying, hey, you know, we're located on a family oriented dead end block. It's really quiet, very nature-esque, beautiful. However, you will notice that in the surrounding areas, are you all still able? Okay, it looked like I was freezing. Okay, but you will notice in the surrounding areas, there's a bit of gentrification going on. That then helped to prepare the guests of like, hey, this is not located in the best neighborhood. However, it is still very safe. Does that piece make sense? Okay. And it's looking like I'm like messing up. Let me know if I'm messing up, you all.
How do you explain? So you said gentrification, but gentrification for some people, like the hood. Can you guys hear me okay? I'm sorry, I'm outside, so I know there's a lot of wind where I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. So gentrification does not equal the hood to me, right? Like when I think about gentrification, real talk, I think, oh, this is an area that used to have Black people or people of color, and now there's a lot of white people moving in. And so the area is starting to change and become more white. So I don't equate gentrification with the hood. But yeah. I'm sorry. Like I think like people's, and this is, so I'm kind of passionate about this. I'm so sorry. But like people's assumptions of what the hood is can be based in, number one, based in their own experience. And I just feel like there's like racial undertones to that. So I'm offended. Like if someone would say like, oh, I'm gonna poo-poo this particular area because it's in the hood. Like the hood is often code word for there's too many Black people around.
Exactly. So this is why I mentioned the gentrification there, because at least I know the difference, and the people who are booking, who in their mind, they know what gentrification is, they will know what it means. The fact that there is a lot of Black people there is absolutely, like as a host here in Atlanta, I will say one of the main concerns that the main problem a lot of people run into is like someone says they book somewhere in Atlanta and maybe they're not familiar with Atlanta. And the fact that honestly, we are a Black city. Atlanta is a Black city. It's Atlanta. So they'll show up to the Airbnb, they'll show up to the listing, and then the host will get a cancellation, or Airbnb, because the host, the guest completely didn't even tell the host anything. They went and straight called Airbnb. Airbnb cancels the reservation. But there have been guests that have showed up to my listing and said, well, this feels unsafe, and they want to cancel a non-refundable reservation. And if you actually go back on, for many of you that may have me on Instagram, I have an IGTV where there was actually a woman who booked the tiny house. And if you recall, some of you might recall, but there was a woman who booked the tiny house and she made this entire story up about like two guys trying to like rob her and her boyfriend in the car in broad daylight. She was like, we came early to scope it out. And I'm like, why would you come scope something out like that? And she's like, we parked in front of this house. And it's like, you're parking in front of strangers' houses. Why did you not call the police? There's so many questions. But Michael, I absolutely 100% agree with you. Is like, you're going to begin to notice, especially if you're in a situation like I am, where it's not necessarily the hood. It's just, there's more Black people in this space and it makes you uncomfortable. You run into that issue, and honestly, it's really discouraging. And I still have not found a way around it, because it's not like you can say, well, okay, I'm just gonna not approve these kind of guests. You just can't, because again, even in that aspect, you never know who's gonna say that it's the hood. It could be somebody who brown, Black, red, green, anybody. But yeah, you feel like, so Michael says, I feel like screw you if you don't want to be around Black people, check yourself and your racist beliefs. Absolutely. I mean, diverse community is still true. Yes, you can say diverse community, but so when Airbnb cancels it, did they get anything refunded? Airbnb is going to reach out to you first, typically, right? I have seen instances where Airbnb just cancels it. I actually just had I was speaking to someone last week who they had this happen. Like, a guest showed up, said they felt unsafe, and Airbnb just canceled it. She had no idea. She just didn't have the reservation anymore. But however, whenever this has happened to me, Airbnb always reaches out. They'll call me or they'll email me like, hey, we received this note from your guest. We are currently investigating and we just want to know what's going on. They are requesting a refund. They typically will say, we'll leave the decision up to you. And each and every time I tell them, you are more than welcome to cancel their reservation, but I would like my cancellation policy to remain intact, because I know exactly why they're doing it. So yeah, it gets pretty crazy. But this is just one aspect of it that, again, I still have not found a remediation for, especially being here in Atlanta, because you'd be surprised how many people don't understand the dynamic of just Atlanta as a city in the first place.
Do you find patterns, like, is it mainly people who are not of color who have these types of concerns?
I wouldn't even say mainly. No, it's on both ends. It surprised me, but it is on both ends. It's on both ends. But yeah, it honestly, Michael said she's getting herself worked up. It can very much easily get you worked up, especially the situation. Like, I'll find a link to that video from my IGTV and send it to you all, because I show the messages and screen grabs and everything. And I show also Airbnb's email to me. And it's crazy the lies folks will make up. But also just like the times we are living, like you see, I don't know. It's just like the racism jumped out. It just jumps out. It's crazy. But that's one. So here's how I responded to Monique. I said, thanks for choosing us, Monique. Again, starting with the thank you. As mentioned in the listing description, this home is located on a safe and quiet, family-oriented dead-end block, though you'll notice a bit of gentrification going on in the surrounding areas. As far as checkout time, our team did inform you numerous times that that having same day check-in and checks out, that we do not have same day check-in and check-outs. So that 4 hours our cleaning team has between when you are supposed to check out 11 a.m. and the next guest check-in 3 p.m. is critical. You agreed to vacate the premises at 11:45, yet our cleaners were met with you and your group still in the home until 11:45 a.m. We appreciate your feedback. So again, as somebody who is interested in booking the space, they're going to be met, or if they're reading these reviews, they're going to be met with a logical response, meaning, okay, this is what's going on, because we do state in the listing description, family-oriented dead-end block, gentrification is going on. And that's all we say about that, because again, we can start to ask questions and say like, well, Monique, why do you say that it's the hood? But again, Monique can't respond. Monique's not going to get a notification saying that I replied to this. So again, this response is not for Monique, because if it was for Monique, I would absolutely ask, well, why do you say it's the hood? Why are you saying these types of statements? However, for future guests, I'm just going to reiterate what we already say within the listing, and that important piece that I feel like most people should know and should be reading. We are located on a dead end block. It's safe, it's quiet, it's family oriented, but there's some gentrification going on, like many, if not all, neighborhoods here in Atlanta. And then even furthermore, just addressing her comment in regards to the host is not flexible as Airbnbs and other hotels in terms of check-in and check-out. And you would think logically, right? Like you all, like a hotel has many rooms. Of course they can be flexible on checkout because they can assign the next person to a different room. We can't do that as hosts. It's the same space. So just again, making sure that you are providing a logical response in that framework of thank them, acknowledge the issue, address any way that you have already began to remediate it. Okay, I believe this is the last one. So Patrick stayed in a tiny house. So this is from May. So Patrick said, overall, the experience of staying in this tiny house was good, and I would stay here again for sure. That being said, the bed was much smaller than the pictures and description led us to believe. It shouldn't even be used as a bed area, given that you can't sleep 2 people and turn over or sleep on your side without touching the ceiling. We made it work, and for as long as we were there, it was not a deal breaker. But I felt like the pictures and description didn't really prepare us for how short of a sleeping space there was. I would bring an air mattress or hope that Precious has upgraded to a sofa bed. The kitchen and bath were very nice, and kitchen, I would say, is extremely generous in size for the space. So this one isn't terrible, right? It's a tiny house, so he's just mentioning it being small. But it's still not a 100% positive review. So just to show y'all this response. So this is my response to Patrick. And there's some important pieces to note that I'll say after I read this response for you. So I'll let Patrick know, great to hear you had a good experience during your second wedding anniversary, Patrick. We have added a sofa bed to the listing, which allows our guests to choose between the loft area or sleeping in the main area. With this being a tiny house, the loft area is, well, tiny. Not literally, but definitely in a sense of how much you can do up there with 2 people. Though I do believe our photos accurately represent that, we have hosted couples with absolutely no problem before and received no complaints. This feedback is great for us to continue improving the stay for future guests. So thank you.
So you just
this is when Whit
like that.
This is when Whit comes in, right? And this is why I say, ask like, what are you celebrating? What's going on? Because it wouldn't have made sense to me if I had not known that, right? I knew they were celebrating their wedding anniversary. Like I knew this is what was going on. So I'm like, why would you book a tiny house for that anyway? But seriously, just knowing those pieces actually help with your response. And again, as you can see, addressing each piece, and even furthermore, we did go as far as to add the sofa bed in there because we thought about it. Again, thinking about my niche, I started to notice that there were a lot more couples booking. And though each and every one didn't complain about the, I guess, clearance that they have on the loft, we wanted to provide them with an opportunity of, okay, if you want to lay back and kick it and watch the TV in the living room, you can do that and let that down as well as an additional sleeping area. So it actually turned out to be really good. The feedback was really good because folks started to really appreciate and mention the loft, like the sleep bed, the sofa bed, in addition to the bed, as really good. And then even furthermore, it added an additional sleeping space for the tiny house, which I then bumped it up to saying we can actually house 3 to 4 people rather than just the 1 or 2. So it actually turned out really good.